Welcome to the CDP, the Commercial Directors Podcast, where we discuss all things commercial directing, treatments, pitching, problem solving on set, and commercial breakdowns. Now you host Evan Swinehart.
3, 2, 1, talk to me.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the show. Today I'm super pumped to welcome Lori. Lori, how are you today?
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm great. Evan, how you doing?
I am good. I'm good. I'm really excited about our episode. Lori and I recently just met, and I was really excited about some of the conversations we had, and I left our meeting like super inspired. So I was like, I have to have her on the podcast as I loved your insight. And then the spot that we're going to break down, I think is really fun and uses a lot of tools that I think people are interested in, but maybe they haven't used. Myself, I've never used it, but I'm really into it, so I can't wait to find out more. But let's just start off with kind of your origin story. You know, if you can just give me your elevator pitch of how you became a director.
Yeah, I mean, I think like probably a lot of people, it started for me back when I was younger in high school and just kind of always, getting a camcorder for Christmas and like making my own little videos and movies, and like I'm gonna age myself right now, but like using Windows Movie Maker, like literally back in the day, to like edit stuff together. And so I always kind of knew that this is what I wanted to do, is make videos, make films. I think I didn't really know that I really wanted to be a director until maybe like 5 or 6 years ago. I think I was just like always kind of obsessed with just storytelling and visual storytelling. And that kind of just turned into me directing. And I currently full-time at an agency where I do a lot of directing for them. So that's kind of just how I got into it. It's just always loved visual storytelling, like an obsession in a way, and started out in documentaries, and it kind of just moved into commercials. So here we are.
How did you make that jump? Because I do think that is kind of a harder jump to maybe go from like documentary to commercial. So how did you kind of bridge that gap or find your way to commercials?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of a firm believer in, not forcing things and letting the universe kind of take me on a journey. Obviously, I, have goals and dreams. But yeah, I mean, it basically started when I got a job at the agency that I'm at now. And they had an in-house director that was working there. And when he left, I kind of transitioned into that role. So I really started commercial directing at this agency, because I think that they had seen like a lot of the work that I've done previously. They saw my passion for creative, which was always far and above my passion for like doing something like producing, and basically gave me a shot. And that's kind of how I got into this world. But yeah, I don't think I realized it, but before I was like kind of commercial directing, I was directing all the time. I just didn't really know it. Like I was like, I worked at Vivo for a long time, and I was like directing talent always, shooting always. Same thing for MTV back in the day. But I just like, I don't know. I didn't know that I was like, that's really what I was doing. And it's like, oh no, I've actually been directing for a long time. I just really didn't put a name on it until, I don't know, maybe like 4 years ago or something.
Yeah, for sure. And will you talk about being a director at a agency? You're the first guest we've had that's been at an agency, and maybe talk about the pros and cons of that, because I could see where there'd be both, the good and the bad, but I do think it's really cool to be able like kind of at like the source of the creative, and being able to work with the creative directors and whatnot in-house to develop these spots.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would say that's probably the biggest positive, is that I do a lot of the times get to be involved in the creative process in terms of like coming up with video concepts and scripts and what those look like. And then from there, I'll move into like a director's treatment. So I get to be, a lot of the times I get to be involved early on, working with the creatives on what the commercial looks like. So for me, that's like a positive, but it can also have its negatives too, where you can kind of get wrapped up in like the agency stuff that, you don't necessarily want to get wrapped up into. And then another positive is, being able to be involved in the post process. And that's still a little bit of a sticky situation. But I at least a lot of times have an opportunity to put my stamp on something. And, give the first edit my best shot. So I think those are like really the positives. I would say the biggest con is just the bigger projects are always like triple bids, always go out of house. So I don't get to see a lot of the like really cool bigger projects that come through the agency, because a lot of times they're looking for a very, very specific director for something. And, while I could fit the bill, sometimes the client, like in their contract, they have to do a triple bid, for example. So that's where it's, I think, the biggest downside. But yeah, overall, it's given me opportunity. So I'm so grateful every day.
I see a lot of opportunity to learn in that role. And lots of times, I think this is sometimes maybe the negative thing about commercial directing is sometimes there's some friction between the production company or the director and the agency, and like, it seems like someone's always the bad guy sometimes. I try to be very aware of that, and hopefully it's not on my sets, but like, I want to know, like, what have you learned being internal that's super valuable for you for working with an agency? Or maybe it's even when they're triple bidding, is it something that they're looking for in these directors that you've taken and been like, okay, this is kind of what, the inside of the agency, what they're looking for, and I can start to like develop that skill set or whatever it may be?
Yeah, gosh, I hate to say it, but really, I feel like what I've learned is that it's not, a lot of times, most of the time, it's not you. And there's not anything that anyone can do to sell themselves through to a project. It's like dependent on so many different factors, from, the creatives, the account, the client. And so like you can do everything right and still not get something. And 90% of the time, I feel like it has nothing to do with the director, with the person that's pitching. It's just like how things go, So I feel like that's like a non-answer, but like really that's kind of what I've seen. Is it's just like so many things play into it that, yeah.
Well, I think that's a great answer, because I think it's very easy to take everything personally, and you start to think like, oh, like why don't they like me, or what don't they like about the work? But it is so much sometimes not about you and like what else they or what they see in someone else's work, or maybe it's just just like maybe we want to work with a DP, you know what I mean, and they've been maybe to die to work with this director or something. So
yeah, it's like it's got nothing to do with you. That's kind of what I've realized. In some ways, it's just like in some ways it's the luck of the draw. I don't know, but yeah, I mean that. Yeah, I haven't noticed any sort of like real trend where it's like, oh yeah, they're big fan of directors who do this or do that necessarily.
One thing I want to talk about when we were kind of just having our pre-interview call, something that came up that was really interesting was we started talking about values as a director and what that means. Should a director have them? But you said you were thinking a lot about your values as a director. So can you just kind of talk through what you've been feeling with values and what do you mean by values when you're talking about directing?
I think this idea of values has really come up for me recently, partially because I'm a new mom. I had a baby about 11 months ago. And one of the things that happens, I think, as a new mom is you kind of are going through this like identity shift, trying to figure out, who you are now as not just, a director, but also a mom as well. So I think just having that whole experience has made me reflect on myself, like who I am, like what are my values? Have they shifted since I've become a mom? Have they largely stayed the same? And I also think I've been thinking about it because I think it can be like a really important driver in the work. And also in life, right? So it's like you have your personal values and your creative values, and sometimes those can collide. But I feel like, yeah, it could be a huge driver in the work and how you see a project, and also, how you bring yourself to set, how you work with people. So I think it just can influence so much, and to keep that in mind, to be like, I know that this is kind of like, this is my core belief system. These are my values. I feel like you have like a real guiding light towards where you want to go, or I feel like it can provide some sort of like really clear direction about where you want to go, in the future. And so it's something that I've obviously been thinking about a lot. And I really think it just, having a kid and really started this whole kind of like thought process of identity and values for me.
So have you identified those values that you want to bring to the work?
Yeah, so I remember, like, so last time we talked a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I'm gonna think about my values. I'm gonna be prepared and come with like, here's all my values, Evan. I've figured it out. I have myself figured out. Like, we're all good. It turns out it's not that simple. But I do think when I think about what my values are, I think about what first got me into this industry. And for me, it was storytelling, kind of finding ways to like tell very human stories that can connect people and kind of make people feel a little less alone, and just kind of also like drive positive change and make a difference. And that sounds cheesy, but that's what first drove me when I wanted to do like filmmaking and documentaries and all of that stuff. Just this like real drive to like understand people, tell their stories, and like make people feel like less alone in this crazy world that we live in. So that's like how I started. And I think a lot of that is still there within me. And I think some of it is, of course, shifting a little bit. But I think for me, like empathy and understanding is like a huge value that I try to bring, that I bring to like my life every day, but also to my creative life as well. So that's one. I think like I always try to shoot through the lens of like empathy with my subjects. Just trying to get to the heart of like who these people are, what are their stories, and like how can we all just feel a little bit like safer in this world. So I think that's kind of where I've landed, and I'm still in this discovery process of like what kind of values I can bring to my commercial work, because I think that's very much like my personal values and stuff that you would see in a lot of my personal work, and trying to figure out how I can bring that to commercial work. Does it fit in a lot of commercial work? I don't know if it does. So that's where I definitely see some challenges, but
yeah, that's what I was going to ask is like, half the time we're just schlepping products, right? So it's like, and I think maybe the spot we're going to break down probably doesn't have a ton of maybe your values in it, but it's like,
yeah.
And I know that you probably made that before you were even kind of like in this self-discovery, but it's like, how will you approach like getting a job and then like putting that through the lens of those values, even if it is maybe something like, a pretzel commercial, which we're going to break down for Super Pretzel.
Yeah, that's a really tough question, and I think it's something that I'm trying to navigate. I think one thing I always try to bring to the work is a sense of feeling. So whether that's making people feel a certain way in terms of like, wow, I really relate to this person and their story, or just like laughing and like relating to something that happens like in a Super Pretzel commercial. That's kind of how I try to bring my values, is just kind of making people feel something and usually feel something like optimistic, hopeful, and also like feel something really human. And so like for example, in the Super Pretzel commercial, this was just like a really little thing, but I had this one moment where like this like older lady like crashes, you know, is like kind of blocking the way in the supermarket. People couldn't get by, and like little things like that are just like, we've all experienced those kind of like really human moments, especially me growing up in New Jersey, where people are not the same as here in Colorado. People are much more chill here and much nicer, but in New Jersey, oh, forget about it. Yeah, just those like little moments where you're just like, oh, I experienced that. Like, I can relate to that. I can feel that. And so I think in the Super Pretzel spots, I tried to do that with a little bit of humor. But yeah, it wasn't super direct. And I think with other projects, I'm just always trying to like insert some like feelings, some emotion into it, whatever it is. And I guess that's how I try to insert my values into projects. It doesn't always work out, but you know, give it a good shot.
I mean, you kind of hit on this before we jump into the Super Pretzel spot. Just talk a little bit why like values are important from a creative lens, and like why you think it's important to put your personal values maybe into the work, even if it is commercials.
Yeah, well, I think you look at a lot of incredible directors and you can know right off the bat probably what some of their values are just through their work. Because that's the lens through which they see the world, that then they project, you know, into the work that they create, that they make. So I think the best directors, the best artists do that. I mean, so it's kind of like that. I feel like it's the key to everything. I feel like it's the key to making art in any form. It's just kind of like knowing what you want to communicate and what you hold dear and what drives you as a filmmaker, and how you want to tell that to other people and bring that to other people. So yeah, I just feel like it's really a crucial part of it. And like I said, those directors who like you see their spot, you're like, I can tell who did that, you know, because they have this like this vibe that they bring to the work, and they have this very clear direction, and they've been lucky to cultivate. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no,
Evan?
for sure. And yeah, it does. It actually sparked something else. Just this whole origin of values, like how it kind of came to you with like being a new mom. And I'm just curious, 'cause I haven't talked about being a parent at all on this podcast, but how, when you became a mom, how did it change you as a director?
Whew. I mean, I think I'm still figuring that out, and I'm still taking it day by day. You know, like I'm a fairly new mom. I haven't had a ton of projects since I became a new mom, and I'm like working on a lot of stuff now that I think will turn into projects and to shoots. So it's really, I feel like I'm gonna be able to answer that question a lot better in maybe a year from now, right? Because it's still so new to me. But I do think it's influenced me as a director already in a couple of ways. One of which is just like, the work is important, of course, but the most important thing in my life is my son. So it's like this really weird shift for me, where it's like, when the work used to be literally the most important thing, there was nothing else, I've now shifted it to like, it's now become like my son is my everything. And, you know, the work kind of does take a little bit of a step back in that sense, just in terms of like dividing attention. But I think it does it in a good way. I think because it helps me to like when I'm in the work, that's all I'm focused on. When I'm with my son, that's all I'm focused on. And so I'm able to like split those worlds a lot better now that I'm a parent. I think it also just like brings a new sense of like curiosity to the world, into like the world and into like my work of like seeing things through a new baby's eyes, like seeing things for the first time that like you just, you know, you don't know until you're in this position and you're seeing your baby like look at something for the first time that they've never seen, or having a moment with them that can inspire a lot. So yeah, I'm really curious to see how it kind of impacts the work for me going forward, but I can already feel it in some ways for sure.
Yeah, no, I think that was really well said. And, you know, I think that was the biggest thing I noticed was, like you said, it was like not your job and your work wasn't the most important thing in your life anymore. But for me, it really adjusted my priorities, and it actually helped the work because it made me not take it that seriously anymore, which I think helped. And then two, it made me work a lot harder almost, you know, like, my priorities were my kids, but, I wanted to do the best I could for them, you know? So it was like, it kind of like made me work a lot harder. So it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a journey.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, excited to see what it brings to your career and your work. Well, let's dive into this Super Pretzel spot. This is really fun, really cool. And I'm going to pull it up here. But before I do that, let's maybe just talk about, you know, how this job came about. Like, obviously it probably came through the agency, but like maybe just talk about like when the job came in, like what was the ask, and then maybe talk about that creative process. Like, how did the creative change? What did you bring to it, etc.?
Yeah, so it did come through the agency. I actually think when they first came to us, they were like, we want a video to show at one of our summits. So just like an internal summit where they wanted to show some sort of video. They didn't really have much of a brief in terms of what it should be, but it should be, you know, something that worked within the brand platform that we had created already. So we saw an opportunity, like I worked with the creative team. We saw an opportunity to just try to sell them what we thought were the coolest ideas that we could possibly come up with. So, you know, I worked with them and we kind of just came up with a couple of different concept ideas and just tried to like sell it through as like a, hey, we can actually make this like brand anthem for you and all of these cut downs for you as well for social and whatnot. And yeah, so that's how it was brought in, and I worked closely with the creative team, and the whole brand platform was like, you know, Super Pretzel kind of like takes you to like a super place, I guess is what it was. So it's like you take a bite of a Super Pretzel and it brings you from something ordinary to something extraordinary. And so this very kind of like surreal, whimsical approach. Yeah, so that's how it got to me. And after concept, I ended up working on a treatment and directing it. But yeah, I was able to work on it in like the very early phases, which was an influence what the creative was, which was awesome.
Cool. All right. Well, let's watch it, and then I got a lot of stuff I want to talk about here.
A Super Pretzel is more than a pretzel. It's an invitation to snack into a moment and find the surreal in every golden brown bite. To set yourself adrift among the oh-so-soft, oh-so-delicious pillows of airy dough that fill each twist. Then come back down to the salt of the earth and relive your greatest hits with a heaping helping of nostalgia. Remember what it was like to be a kid again, and the only care in the world was a taste of victory. Because the same Super Pretzel soft pretzels you find in your freezer are at the game, the park, or the multiplex.
Can I have a Super Pretzel, please?
And the reviews are in. Soft, salty, scrumptious. So when craving calls and the stage is set for satisfaction, send Humdrum packing and make every moment super.
Okay, so lot of fun going on in here. Lot of characters, a lot of locations. So let's just first start with like kind of some more pre-pro stuff. Like, was there anything that just kind of like came up that was unexpected or problems that you had to solve once you guys had the creative? It was like, okay, cool, now we're running, but like, how do we solve for XYZ?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think the biggest problem that we ran into was just budget. So this, we didn't have a ton of money to make this. I think it was very ambitious, creative for the budget. And so it was a lot of problem solving and figuring out how we could bring these worlds to life without building like full on sets. So that was the biggest challenge. And I think, you know, the team kind of worked together to come up with a plan where we would shoot, have the backdrop essentially be like an LED wall, and then have everything in the foreground be like a set that we would build out. And that was not necessarily like, if I were to choose like the ideal way to do it, it wouldn't be that. I would have, you know, wanted to actually build out these different worlds and these different sets. But that was just kind of the problem solving that we had to do and the world that we had to live in to be able to make this work within the budget and to be able to really bring these worlds to life with the money that we had. So yeah, I mean, that was the biggest challenge. And I think also the biggest challenge and then having this like big LED wall and having like a practical set was just making sure that those two worlds matched and that they were within the same world. And that was more so, it was definitely something that we did in pre-pro, but also something that we had to manage on the days as well to make sure that, you know, all of the sets kind of work together.
For sure. So had you ever worked with a LED wall before?
No.
So maybe talk about that. Like, so like in this shot, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Like what is practical and what is not practical here?
Yeah, so practical is like the desks, the computers, those green walls, the clocks. So everything that's within that world is practical. The ceiling was our LED wall, and then that like hallway where you see it going back and like those other cubicles, yeah, right there, that was our LED wall as well. And then everything else was practical. Like
what were kind of the challenges of like building like this scene?
Or
things you found out like for the future, like it would be great to do this next time I shoot with an LED wall.
Well, yeah, I think so. There was a software that they used for the LED wall. I forget what it was called. But really getting familiar with that ahead of time, I think would have been helpful. I think, you know, for this, the challenge was getting the ceiling right, and getting the colors in the background right, for the LED wall to match with what we had in the foreground. So that took a bit of trial and error on the day, for sure. Like I think we had to go through a couple of different renderings of that background until we found something that worked, which was obviously a bit of a time suck for sure. So yeah, I mean, in terms of like, yeah, working with the LED wall in the future, like, we didn't get all the backdrops really dialed in probably until like closer to the day, like the day before or the day of, and just making sure that those were a bit more dialed in really before, which is hard because you don't know how it's going to look with the foreground until the practicals are in there. So there's a bit of that trial and error, but yeah, I mean, I think understanding like the technology of the LED wall is like is an important thing as well, and just like the program that they use to get those, which I really can't even remember, to get those backdrops on there, and they essentially created those backdrops. So yeah, it was definitely a challenge in many ways.
Because how many days was this?
2 shoot days.
Okay.
And then 1 pre-light day and set build day.
And where was this LED wall? Where did you shoot at?
So we shot this in Tampa, Florida, at a studio there. And frankly, like, I think it's a little bit more affordable to shoot there. So that's one of the reasons that we did do it there. But yeah, I mean, the studio was great. It was called Coastal Creative in Tampa. And I mean, we just had so much room with the LED wall and then with the foreground to like build out some like pretty fun, robust sets. So it did end up working out.
Yeah, how big was that LED wall?
Oof, I forget, Evan, but it was big.
Yeah, because
it's pretty big.
That's like what I see as being the challenge is, like you said, like how does it look once the foreground elements are in there, and like are we creating the right perspective and depth with our backgrounds compared to what's practical?
Absolutely. And like I said, it was just really trial and error on the shoot day. I think the first scene we shot was I can't remember. The first scene we shot might have been, I can't remember actually. It was either this or the grocery store. So the first scene we shot, we did a set build on the pre-light and did a pre-light. And so we were able to really like dial that in. But then for the rest of the sets, they were like kind of built in between. So for those, we had to, we didn't have a ton of time to really mess around with, you know, what the backdrop looked like and how it interacted with the foreground. But, you know, just trial and error on the shoot day. And then we would also, like you see in this frame here, we would also have like some foreground props that we would use as well, and some like those cardboard cutout trees that was a foreground prop as well, so that was not the backdrop. Nice. So we did like a lot of like cardboard cutouts for this little girl in particular, and tried to like make it real whimsical and fun and surreal.
For sure. And with the background plates, like how involved were you in working to get those right, or like with the design of it?
Very involved. What we did was we came up with color palettes for each of the different scenes. So for like, we had the movie theater scene, grocery store, office, and then the little girl scene. We had these different color palettes that we were working with. So everyone knew like what colors we were working with. We're kind of trying to go, aside from this little girl scene right here, we're trying to go a little bit more like monochromatic, or at least choose like a couple of key colors that will really just like bring the set to life. So yeah, I mean, I worked like, I remember running up and down the stairs from like talking to the LED wall guys to like running back down the stairs to like talk to my DP and production designer to figure it all out. So it was a lot. I was very hands-on with that part of it, just making sure that it kind of all looked right. And obviously my DP, Drew Sirocco, was as well, to make sure that the perspective, you know, worked out and everything. But
from that, like how much light was the LED wall throwing onto the talent? I'm always curious, like, because that's always like what's appealed to me with it versus like shooting on green is A, you don't have to spill, but B, like it feels a little more real if like those backdrops are kind of throwing colors and whatnot and reflections onto the talent.
Yeah, I mean, we had, I feel like it played a bit of a role, but we definitely had the talent, like, I don't know, probably like 10 feet or something back from the wall. So, you know, I didn't want anything to feel too kind of harsh on them and have it feel like they're like right up against the backdrop. But yeah, I mean, I think it really didn't play too much of it didn't have too much of an impact on what we did. And, you know, I credit Drew, my DP, for that, because he just did an amazing job of lighting it where it could work, you know, throughout multiple scenes. So
For sure. Talk about this kind of fun movement here, right? So we've got her kind of like flying through the air here, and then here she is kind of like riding on a cloud through these flowers. So how did you guys go about kind of the movement in her scene?
yeah, so I mean, honestly, this was a while ago. I have to be honest, I'm blanking on how we did this move up and down, but here she was in a cloud. We definitely had her on something where she was moving. The biggest challenge with this was that we also had to move the props as well. So like you see the butterfly moving, you see the flowers moving in the foreground and background coming through there. So it was like a lot of movement in terms of, you know, because if we just had her moving and nothing else, it just would have felt, I think, really, really weird. So we kind of had to bring movement throughout with everything. So yeah, I mean, just on a dolly, and that's kind of how we shot it. And then we also did a lot of, you know, work in post to like some of this stuff. I think some of those like green lights in the back and stuff were some like little VFX touches that we did, or to like bring them in and out of these different worlds. We definitely did some VFX to help with that transition.
For sure. And what about like timing, right? You've got a lot of like choreography kind of going on set, and like, you know, with camera movement, like you said, the props, but then you even literally have like dancing pretzels with this kind of movie theater scene, you know? So maybe like, what were kind of some of your, I don't know, strategies or tips for like the timing of all this? Because a lot of this, to me, especially in 2 days, you've got so much. You can spend a lot of time just like on one of these shots, just working on kind of the blocking or the choreography and timing. So like this scene, you know, like what kind of like little tips and tricks did you plan for or discover while you were shooting all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I do so much prep work also before I get on set. Like that is something that I feel very strongly about. I try to prepare as much as I can, like knowing the exact shots that I want, like knowing, like I had a really intense breakdown for this shoot where it was just like this shot, like knowing exactly which shot we were going to go into next, because there was no time to waste on this one, right? Like you said, it was a lot to get in 2 days. So, I mean, I just credit all of that, being able to do that to the prep work that I worked on, and just making sure like that I was coming in super dialed in, knowing exactly what I wanted, and the kind of order of operations of things. So, and then in terms of, so that's the only way, that's really how we were able to get it all done. I think in terms of blocking, you know, I had an AD, but there's not a ton of camera movement in this. So one of the things that there was some, but one of the things that we didn't have to contend with too much was, you know, blocking really kind of dynamic or intricate camera moves with talent. So it was more just like kind of figuring out talent blocking and letting the camera kind of just witness it. So I think that was also a saving grace, is that there wasn't a ton of like I said, intricate camera moves. It was really like about the movement in the frame.
For sure. And when you talk about like that prep, right? Like that pre-pro and the pre-viz, like what specifically did you do for this? Like, is it storyboards, animatics? Did you do like, camera tests? Can you kind of just walk us through like what
Yeah.
that prep looked like?
Yep. Storyboards, yes. Animatics, yes. Did all of that. Yeah. Just really dialing in what the sets were going to look like, what obviously the color palettes were going to look like, getting as close to what that LED wall would look like as possible. And like I said, just kind of, I had the animatics, I had the storyboards, just coming in with like, here's our order of operations, here are the list of shots that we're going to get in this order, and let's just get it done. Like it really just came to the point of executing. Although the pretzel dancers did learn their dance, I think day of, so that was a little complicated.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which one of these scenes was the most challenging for you?
The little girl.
Just because of her performance, or
No,
or what?
she was great. I think it was just the movement that we're trying to do of her, like kind of like you said, going up into the sky, her flying through the sky, and then coordinating that move with our camera move, with props moving, and all of that stuff was just the most complicated one of them all, I would say. So
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
She was great. Jane Kelly, I think was her name. She was awesome.
That's cool. Were there any like happy accidents that you found with like shooting with the LED wall, or anything that was like, since it was your first time, that you were like, okay, like I actually really liked this about shooting on the LED wall, and like I would definitely go to it in the future?
Happy accidents, I don't know about that. I mean, I think the biggest happy accidents were just like with talent and with actors and their performances, right? It's like just having them give like the guy in The Office giving that like woo, like just like little things like that don't necessarily plan for, but come out, those little moments that happen on set that are created but also not planned, right? So I think that's the biggest happy accidents with this. And I think with the LED wall, I mean, I would do it again if I had to. It was great in many ways. It was just like, if I could build a whole set, I would much prefer to do that, obviously.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, I think what it's cool about it, but I mean, a set does the same thing. But what I like about it, especially in this instance, is like you're able to create all these worlds, and probably do them a lot faster and obviously cheaper than a set build.
Exactly.
And I guess, like, how much could you change the background? Like, okay, so let's say you get your practicals in there and something's not looking right. Was it an easy fix to be able to change the background plate?
Yeah.
Or no?
It was a pretty easy fix in the sense of like they could do it, in probably 5 or 10 minutes, but that's still 5 or 10 minutes. That's not ideal to lose. But yeah, like I said, I would be like running up and down the stairs to go talk to them and be like, this needs to be different, and give them some direction on how it needed to look. And they would, usually be able to get it up pretty quickly, where it never killed our days. I'll put it that way. It never once like killed a day.
Yeah.
Maybe close, but yeah.
Talk about that a little bit. Not killing the day, but like you're running back up and down stairs, and this is a new tool that you've never used. Did you find it like that's challenging and distracting, where you were so focused maybe more on the backgrounds and sets versus the talent's performance, and kind of how did you balance that?
I was focused on this, but I think I always try to give most of my attention to talent and making sure that we get those performances. So I don't feel like it took away from anything there. If anything, it was just like a little bit of like an added rush of like, you know, a problem that we had to solve for, but wasn't impossible. Like we could do it kind of thing. So it was like it was just like a little bit of that added rush, added energy. But yeah, I don't feel like it really affected working with the talent. And, you know, I also really like to work with DPs who, obviously I have a vision. I know like what shots I want to get, but DPs who like have things dialed in themselves where I don't have to like be super, what's it called? Like over their shoulder, at every second. So having, you know, a DP that I really, really trusted in, for this also was important. But yeah, I could see how it could be distracting and get in the way of the work, but I really didn't find that actually. So that's a good thing.
Yeah,
I guess.
that's great. This kind of these couple of floating pretzels in this piece. Talk about like these product shots and like how you guys did this off some magical spinning floating pretzel.
Yes, that was a VFX trick. I mean, we had the pretzel like, you know, attached to a spinny thing. I forget, but yeah, it was. I mean, we just kind of cut that out in post. I think we, you know, used some tape on that just to like make it easier for our VFX team to cut that out. But yeah, that was actually really simple.
And did you guys add this glow in post too, or was that part lighting, part VFX?
Definitely, I think both. Like it was definitely a bit of both. Like I said, we added some VFX just to like give it a little bit of that extra drama. But yeah, it's also the lighting. Like we really wanted to make it be like these like pretzels in the spotlight. This beautiful kind of I'm blanking on what that's called, but
like a
this
turntable,
beautiful kind of like Roman. No, like
the pillar, yeah,
like a Roman pillar, like just like ridiculous stuff that was just like, what? Why are they? But like, why are they doing this? But like, let's just do it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because I'm gluten free, but like this little floating pretzel montage like makes my mouth water, and like I just like picture like tearing it, and it's so like soft, and dipping it in the cheese like definitely makes me want a pretzel. That's great.
Yeah, that's how you know if you're gluten free, if you see a pretzel commercial and you're like, I need that soft pretzel.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. One last thing, it was which one of these kind of little vignettes was your favorite and why?
I think the Office one was my favorite.
That's my favorite too.
Yeah, I mean the talent was just so good. Joey was his name. I mean, he was just incredible. Like he would take things, like I'd give him direction and he would just take it and run with it and be able to nail it every single time. So I think he was just so fun to work with because he was hilarious, and you know, he also made my job easy in terms of directing because he just like crushed it all the way through and was just so funny. So yeah, I think that one was probably my favorite out of all.
Yeah, how much of what he did was like improv versus just total like, you know, kind of like, okay, yeah, I'll just do exactly what you're saying.
You know, a lot of it was improv. Like I would kind of be like, okay, you're bored at the office and you're kind of fiddling around with stuff on your desk. And he would take that and like crumple up the little, you know, ball and like kind of like, you know, some of it I would give like build a tower with the erasers and stuff like that. But he would take anything I gave him, and then like I kind of like would take it a little bit of a step further, which I think was perfect for this spot. So it was fun.
Yeah, no, he's great. And I think this one's my favorite too, is because, I do think his performance stands out. Like every time I see his performance, you know, I chuckle a little bit. But this set, I just like love this, all these leading lines and the perspective in this one. Like, you know, not saying any of them feel like it's okay, like that's LED wall. Like I would have never actually been able to probably pinpoint that. But this one especially, like I feel like just blends so well. I just love it. It's really cool. Yeah,
we were trying to go with like this old 80s look, and also was inspired by, I don't know if you've seen Severance, the show, but like
absolutely.
The Office and that definitely inspired this look a little bit, to try to make it feel like this like drab place where you just, you know, don't want to be, and then you take a bite of a pretzel and boom, you're like in this world of like everything you could ever want kind of thing. So no, this one worked out. I love how like monochromatic it is in terms of the color scheme as well. I love doing that kind of like art direction. Is really fun, and I don't get to do that a lot. So when I do, it's like such a joy.
Yeah. So when you were building this set and the background specifically, like did you give them like a sketch or like photos and inspiration, and they came up with kind of like the look from there? Or is it like they had like pre-built kind of stuff that you then could like change the color and add different stuff?
No, we gave them like our, you know, color template. We gave them, I gave them photos of, you know, what I wanted to look like, swipe. And then it was just trying to figure out what's the size that we want and how do we want it to be like set in front of the LED wall, right? So we kind of decided two desks like back to back kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, so once we had to figure out like the spacing of it all and the sizing and like how we wanted everything to be laid out, it was pretty easy because I just told them what I wanted, gave them photos, and like, here's our color palette. And boom, they were off and running. And our production designer on this was incredible as well. So he really just crushed it, and had a whole team of people who were like building sets, props, all this stuff. So it was pretty amazing. Yeah,
I love that when you can just give somebody a task and they run with it, and they're really good at just kind of leading it, you know, and they crush your expectations.
Yeah, but the thing is like I really had to, I did have to kind of fight for the production designer I wanted. You know, I think I just knew how important set design was in this, and I knew that if we didn't have the right person on the job, it wouldn't turn out great. So I really, really like fought to make sure that we had, you know, pretty awesome production designer on it. And you know, I don't think it was cheap, but I think it was worth it for sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Based on the final product.
From a lensing perspective, did you guys have to figure out, like, did you and your DP have to kind of figure out then, like, okay, we know we want to shoot this at like, I don't know, 35 millimeter, and then the background would have like that same perspective as well? Like, did they like, you know, kind of work that that lensing or depth of field into their plates?
You know, we didn't really work it into the plates. It's just what we ended up using. I'm pretty sure we used a zoom lens. So, rather than, you know, swapping out different primes throughout the day, we kind of just sat on one lens and like zoomed in, like figured out what our framing was. I don't think there was too many times where we had to, adjust the perspective actually. Which was great. But that was something that it was like kind of take by take. We had to, like, if we were like then punching in on him, you know, we'd kind of have to look at the shot and determine it was like, it actually looked fine. Like we didn't deal with too many issues in terms of that. which is great because that could have been a pretty big time suck.
Yeah, and I think too, like not having, because when you did your pre-light day, were you able to kind of like test some things as well, like with that, or
only for like one of the sets,
okay,
because everything else wasn't built yet. So I forget which one we did first. It might have been The Office, actually. I think this was the first one that we did. And so we were able to test this out, but we weren't able to do any of the others until we, were like setting up.
Yeah, I think that's what's always hard about some of this stuff is like if you're shooting at a location that you don't get to see it until like day before or day of, and it's just kind of like, all right, well, this is what it is, and not be able to test things out. That's always kind of nerve-wracking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you want to kind of mention about this spot before we jump into our lightning round here?
I think the only thing I'll say is that this spot, kind of talking about our values before and then like looking at this spot, they feel so different. But what I loved about doing this spot was that I was able to kind of exercise a different mentality, kind of like I was really able to kind of access a different part of myself, that part that sees humor in a lot of different things. And a lot of times I don't get to do that, or I don't do that as much. But like with this, I was like almost forced in this position to be like, yeah, like this is just kind of fun. Like you just like have fun with it. And so that's what it challenged me in that way, but it was a challenge in like the best way possible. And I will say, like, I had such a blast on this shoot. I was also pregnant at the time when I shot this, so I was like not feeling the greatest, but yeah, it was super, super fun, and it made me want to do more stuff like this. So we'll see.
Yeah, because this is not typical of your style.
No, I wouldn't say so. Like, I mean, this is the only thing that I think I have that kind of looks like this. That being said, I think, like we've talked about, I'm still in this journey of like trying to figure out what my style is. Do I want to go more in this direction? Do I want to go more comedy? Do I want to go more like human-centric stories, like what I feel really connected to, what I've always felt really connected to? And I think it's okay for it to shift throughout life, right? It's like it doesn't always have to be the same. But yeah, it's just something that I'm like, okay, I'll just take it day by day, see what comes, and yeah, just have fun while I'm doing it. Because if you're not having fun, then it's like, what's the point? So
nice. Yeah, we will. I have a question that's kind of hit on that in the lightning round here, so let's
okay.
get to that. All right, cool. Well, let's get to the lightning round.
Let's do it.
All right, so first question is, so what directors inspire you? So this could be film directors or commercial directors, but who is maybe some directors that you're kind of always, looking at their work or, aspiring to be?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, obviously, but I think there's two that kind of come to my head. So my favorite spot of the last couple years was that farmer. I don't know if you ever saw that Farmer's Dog commercial.
Oh yeah,
I freaking love that thing. Like
yeah.
It is like, I love that spot. So that was directed by someone named Go. I'm not sure how to say his last name. Go Iramoto. But he does a lot of like work that's really grounded, I think, in human connection and just feeling. And like I said, that spot is like one of my favorite spots. I also am a huge dog lover, so there's that too. But yeah, huge fan of his work. There's another commercial director named Tucker Bliss who really like his work as well. And I feel like it's just kind of beautiful, thoughtful, and like has like some like little quirks to it. Shows like little quirks of like humanity that I think is really cool. So but yeah, I think both of those directors, it's like I said at the beginning, they have a specific style that they kind of stick to, and really, really enjoy that. what they put out. So
That's awesome. All right. So what inspires you outside of work? Like to either bring to a job, right? Like, okay, or it's just to kind of completely, cut loose and get away from the work.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's been inspiring me lately is just, like I said earlier a little bit, kind of seeing the world through my child's eyes, like seeing him experiencing everything new for the first time. And that kind of curiosity is, I think, really what is inspiring me recently. And just kind of, it's so easy to just be on your phone and scroll and get stuck in your own little world, but just like being present with him and experiencing things that he's experiencing, and like not having my phone with me, and just kind of those moments I find inspiring. And then just getting out in nature is always a helpful thing for me.
All right. So tools, what tools can you not live without in it? Could be pre-pro, production, or post, but something you're like, man, this thing's changed my life.
Gosh, I mean, yeah, tools. I think I use a lot of tools in pre-pro, from like, whether it's like frame set or shot deck or eye candy. And then like Instagram, I hate that I'm saying that, but like Instagram's a tool in some ways. Those I feel like they're so helpful. So I definitely use those a lot. I think a tool that I use that I can't live without on set or when I'm traveling is just like, and this is something not related to production, but like I have a little travel yoga mat that I bring with me, and I'll do like just like 5 to 10 minutes of light yoga, like sun salutations every morning before I get on set. And that just kind of grounds me for the day. Like I just feel grounded after that. So that's definitely something that's like, not related, but like when I'm traveling for a job, I am pretty consistent with that. And I'm like, I should be more consistent with that in my regular life too. But I don't know why it seems so much harder.
Right. Yeah. It's like the time. You don't have time. You're too busy. Kids.
I know.
And family and whatnot. All right. So the last question is, we have a guest. We have the guest always leave a question for the next guest. So your question was around kind of sometimes, okay, this job can be a grind, or, he kind of had mentioned like there's people like who are chasing like just like self-clout a lot, and can be maybe a little pretentious. So he said, the exact question is, why are you doing this?
I mean, honestly, that's a really, really good question. Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes down to it, why I'm really doing it is I definitely feel a need to create. And sometimes I just want to create like videos with my dogs, like make videos with my dogs, and that's how I remind myself that it's not about the result always, or it's not about the accolades or the awards, but it's just about the process of making. And that's why I do it, I think. It's like, I just, like when I was on maternity leave and I wasn't really making anything for a little while, and like, I was just going a little stir crazy there. So I definitely feel this desire to make videos, like whatever it is. Like I said, video with my dog, whatever, silly stuff that gets no recognition. And so I try to do some of that because it reminds me of why I do it. And I think I need that reminder every once in a while, because it's really, really easy to get wrapped up into the like success of it all. What does success mean? but I really try to stay grounded in like, I'm just doing this because I really like making and I really like the process of it. And I love to edit too. So yeah, I guess that's why. That's a great question.
Yeah, it really is, because I do think it's easy to, it's funny because when you start your career, you know exactly why you're doing it, right? And then you get beat up and jaded or lost a little bit. I think it's kind of easy to get lost. And then I ask myself that a lot, like, why am I doing this, But I know for me, whenever I get on set, it's pretty apparent why I do it. And for me, it's so much of the relationships and the people and this energy that's created on set and this kind of like vibe almost is almost unbeatable. All right, cool. Well, lastly, it's your turn. So you need to leave a question for the next guest.
I didn't actually think of one beforehand and I meant to. But one thing that I guess I'm always curious about, how do you stay grounded on set when things go wrong?
That's a great question. It's a really good question.
It's hard.
Awesome. It's very hard. Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And maybe you don't. Maybe the answer is you don't stay grounded. You just like let everyone have it. I don't know. But
I go black. I just go like blank inside. I know. Just like everything's like, oh God.
Yeah. Totally.
Well, great. Lori, thank you so much. Really appreciate you being on the show. Love that pretzel spot. Love the problem solving you guys did to come up with shooting on the LED wall. Very fun tool. What about, where can people find you at? Instagram, X, wherever?
Yeah,
like,
probably the gram.
Okay.
Like probably at Lori Schmoan on Instagram. Is probably the best way to find me, at least until I decide to, get brave enough and maybe delete it someday. But that's not going to happen anytime soon. So probably, yeah, that's the best way.
Awesome. All right. Well, Lori, again, appreciate your time. And definitely gave us some things to think about. I know I definitely will be thinking about my values and how to bring them to the work. So really appreciate your insight.
Yeah, next time we talk, I want to hear your POV, or I want to hear about what you're thinking on all your values and stuff like that. So
yeah, we'll do.
Grab coffee soon.
All right, let's
talk about it. Okay.
All right,
cool.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, that does it for another show. Thanks for watching the Commercial Directors Podcast, and please subscribe to the show on any of the platforms where you listen to your podcast and on YouTube. YouTube's a great place where you can actually watch the breakdown, so make sure you subscribe. Also, give us a follow on the gram at the Commercial Directors Pod, and please DM us there. We would love to hear from you on potential guests you'd like on the show and what topics you want to learn more about. Or you can email me at evan@swinehartco.com, and that's SWINEHARTCO.com.